quick, Minnesota hockey fan on Twitter says, upset of the year, Duluth East getting to the championship in high school hockey. They almost could have lost to Elk River and not made it to the tournament at all. That's actually a very good call.
If they had won against Lakeville North, I would certainly say so. I mean, but the Edina win was huge.
Yeah.
But to win it all over Lakeville North would have catapulted them to the top spot.
Still, either way, that's actually a very astute comment.
That is very astute. Our first category of the final segment of the Minnesota Sports ESPYs, Best Play. You never know when you're about to witness a stellar play. Likely, neither does the player who makes it. But when great plays happen, everyone drops their jaw in amazement and appreciates what they've just witnessed. Tom, Best Play of the Year.
I'm going to go with Jarius Wright, and this is probably an awful reason, but I remember being in the interview with him afterwards, and he goes, wait, it just throws up.
I remember that.
And such a nice guy, a very good person, very great athlete. I really think he offers a lot to the Vikings. Maybe not as dynamic as Cordero Patterson, but definitely offers something in terms of taking handoffs and stuff like that. You have to beat the Jets. It was in overtime. I know it's not a very meaningful game, but you don't want to lose to the frickin' Jets. So, it was a nice 87-yard screen. It was at home. The University of Minnesota Stadium went absolutely nuts. And so I think the fact that you see an elite athlete who's that toned do something that's so,
vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not only that, but just, it almost was that he stretched himself to the max, right? And making that play. And it's don't lose to the Jets, So I don't know. I thought it was really cool. I felt bad for him. I talked to him afterwards, and he's like, yeah, I'm fine. But you never see that with an athlete where they're really pushed to the. I mean, you see guys pushed to the limits, but where they're literally vomiting in the locker room.
That might have been the best moment at TCF Bank Stadium last year. Zach?
That's also what I went with too. So not much for me to add there. The reason I picked it, the Vikings defense was stymied to force the Jets to punt in overtime. And then 2 quick plays to Matt Asiata, and then the screen to Jarius Wright, and he broke a couple tackles, and Vikings fans went home happy.
There were 2 overtime games the Vikings were involved in last year. One of them was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Anthony Barr made a terrific defensive play, recovered a fumble after stripping it, and then ran it into the end zone, turning defense to offense for the win. Anthony Barr is the winner of the Best Play.
Hey. Nah, that's incorrect. It's Jarius Wright. We can make up. We can make up the.
I'm outmanned.
Okay. me and Zach can actually reenact it if you want me to. I'll throw up. I don't care.
Moving on to the Best Coach. A great coach is a field general leading the troops into battle, building their mettle and feeding their courage as they head out to meet their foe head on. It's someone who inspires, teaches, and continually promotes a culture of excellence and improvement. Best coach in Minnesota sports this year. Zach?
For me, this was really tough. I kind of bounced between 2 guys, and I still can't really make my decision up. I wrote down Mike Yeo. 3 straight playoff appearances. I know, last year the playoff appearance. I think I'm going to go with Mike Yeo. The Wild struggled the beginning half of last season, way exceeded expectations. And then Mike Yeo has the infamous video where he lashes out at his players at the practice, kind of jumpstarts the Wild. They sign Dubnyk, or they trade for Dubnyk. The rest is history. So I'm going to say Mike Yeo, but for me, Mike Zimmer is a very, very close second. Do I think Mike Yeo is the best coach in Minnesota now? Maybe not. But as far as the last calendar year, I think I'm going to have to go with Mike Yeo.
Tom. Yeah, with Mike Yeo, I always feel like he's been given a lot. That's kind of Chuck Fletcher's team. And what he does really well is develops young players. He obviously came from the Houston Aeros, which used to be their AHL program, and does a good job kind of integrating them into the NHL. But in terms of X's and O's, and even kind of knowing when to push and when to kind of back off, at times I feel like he's almost too kind of stoic or too kind of button up. So I have a hard time nominating him as best coach, although you have to give him his due. Look, he's been in the playoffs. He's kind of made Minnesota Wild hockey relevant after the honeymoon. With Flip Saunders, the lack of three-point shooting, and I know he's trying to developing guys, but he's more like the president who stepped down rather than you hope eventually he kind of just goes up to the upper management and they get an actual head coach there. So it kind of brings it down to Paul Molitor, who's done a very good job. But again, we haven't seen the second half of the year for him. or Mike Zimmer, who's basically kind of a lot of people. You kind of talked about the Minnesota Vikings being overhyped. Well, people are talking about them as a playoff team, as kind of this sleeper to watch. So I would not necessarily discount kind of what he's done, or I guess the momentum he's provided for the Vikings on a national level. I'd say him and the combination of him and North Turner with the Vikings.
And I'm going to kind of throw, this is kind of a wild card name, but what about a guy like Jerry Kill?
Yeah, that's actually
kind of what he's done for the Gophers program. I mean, he's come in, kind of built his team, put his team together, and he's got a Gophers team coming into 2015 where they're a legitimate threat to win the Western Conference.
We talked about the upsets too and all that. Yep.
Yeah,
that's actually a very good call.
Jerry Kill had so few resources when he took over this program, and rarely do you see such a linear improvement year to year to year, quite literally brick by brick, with this new TCF Bank Stadium, finally good football being played in it. And Jerry Kill at the center of it. He is a disciplinarian coach that somehow has captured the imaginations of his players. He's dancing in the locker room after the win against Iowa, which is great to see a coach be so human. Jerry Kill gave his team a chance, one good quarter away from being Big Ten West champions. Jerry Kill is the coach of the year. I don't know where that came from, but it was in our system.
You could go with like Mike Randolph too. Actually, going back to the high school hockey and getting Duluth to where they went. I mean, I think there's a lot of good coaching actually in the market, and it's why there's kind of this promise beyond just the young players that we have here, but like that Minnesota sports can turn around after a lot of kind of misfortune.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, almost every team has a skipper that you can put your faith in to some extent. Certainly Zimmer. Flip has a ton invested in this franchise, so you trust the direction he's taking it. Mike Yo has proven to be a coach who, while faltering in the first half, has a knack for turning things around, very level-headed. And then, of course, Paul Molitor, as level as you can get, he's doing some incredible things with the Twins this year. And then the college coaches, I mean, you've got a fixture in Lucia, Jerry Kill.
Little Patino.
Patino may be the one who's getting the most flack right now just because of the rumors surrounding his departure and the amount that he did last year with a team that supposedly was supposed to contend in the Big Ten. So Patino, while I find him to be one of the more gregarious and likable coaches in the market, he might be toward the bottom of the power rankings just in public perception. We've got 2 awards to go, and they're the 2 big ones. Best Athlete. The best athlete goes to the most impactful player of the year, the one who could be relied upon from the first preseason game until the final play of the regular season or the playoffs, giving maximum effort all the while and vaulting himself into the top tier of talent the league offers. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, you could go multiple directions. Ryan Suter, who obviously spends a lot of time on the ice for the Wild, with baseball, Byron Buxton, how fast he is.
I think this is an interesting interpretation, because by athlete I wasn't necessarily referring to athleticism.
Yeah,
but
I guess
top
went,
athlete.
I went kind of with, well, my answer is both actually, but I went with raw athleticism as well as I guess performance on the field. I'd say Adrian Peterson. I know that he has something to prove. He has the injuries, and
he didn't play though.
That's true. I would say in terms of raw athlete though, who's proven the most, I guess I'm interpreting this maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's fine.
In terms of just raw athleticism and who holds the most potential, and maybe even the biggest name. I'm trying to think of, you can maybe argue like Zach Parise in hockey circles, Joe Mauer, but Joe Mauer is really kind of, his stock has dropped a lot around here. And then, Zach LaVine, if I would go with a basketball player, the fact that he can literally float in the dunk contest and stuff like that, you could go with that. But again, he hasn't proven anything on the court like Adrian Peterson has. So we have yet to see what he's going to offer, but in terms of what he's done for the Minnesota Vikings, I'd say he's the most superior athlete.
Just so we're going apples to apples here, because I had a different criteria, if you could pick a top, most prominent athlete of the past year, not necessarily based on
I'd say it'd be like Hunter or Garnett, right? Those are the biggest names that come back.
No, I think we're still not on the same page here.
I'll share what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
The way that I define best athlete is I'm looking for the MVP of that team.
Okay.
My pick and my nominee is Zach Parise. 33 goals, 29 assists in 74 games, 9 points in 10 playoff games. I mean, he's a guy where if you take him out of the lineup for the Minnesota Wild, that team is not anywhere near where they finished. He's a guy that's good on the power play, good on the penalty kill when they put him out there. He's a guy that's one of the hardest working guys in the NHL for his size. He's not afraid to get in players' faces. Zach Parise, to me, is the Minnesota Wild. He's essentially the captain without the C on his sweater. And the Minnesota Wild, I mean, you look at what happens if you take Joe Mauer out of the Twins lineup. The Vikings succeeded with Adrian Peterson out of their lineup last year to an extent. We haven't seen anything really with Wiggins or anybody like that in basketball out of the lineup.
Although Wiggins probably will turn into that.
Yeah, he probably, but we just haven't seen enough of him yet. But I think the biggest impact and the biggest difference maker to their team, and my nominee for best athlete, is Zach Parise.
That's my line of thinking as well. Zach Parise is the winner. Zach Parise, the best athlete, or MVP, as Zach put it, of the 2014-15 year. And now our pinnacle award goes to the best team in Minnesota sports. The best team is always the one that captures the imagination and takes fans along for the ride. While most great teams can't finish their season as a champion, they can create lasting memories along the way. Zach?
This was another really tough one for me because you want to go with the what have you done for me lately. My choice was the Minnesota Wild. You know, they made it to the playoffs last year. They made it through the first round, 3 straight playoff appearances. But you have to kind of look at it. I mean, the Vikings were below expectations, but they're going to be better this year. The Timberwolves were below expectations, but they're going to be better this year. And the Twins, who went through 5 straight 90-loss seasons, are kind of coming out of nowhere this year. So you don't really know. I mean, you kind of just have to pick and choose kind of where you want to go and how you define it. But for me, I'd have to go the best team just strictly based off of what they've done for the city is the Minnesota Wild.
Tom, agree, disagree?
You know, the Wild was my choice, although you talk about kind of what have you done for me lately, they did get stuck behind the Blackhawks, and there's some concern that within the division and then when it comes to playoff time, that how are you going to deal with Kane, Taves, even with this team trading away Sharp, trading away Saad, they're still with Duncan Keith, Seabrook. I mean, they're pretty loaded, very experienced. I'd say the Wild probably the best run, and they're not freaking out right now and burning down what they've developed. But the Vikings actually seem like, and I know it seems absurd to say this, but the best run organization in terms of look at the talent coming up, look at what's surrounding Bridgewater, look at the defense, look who's coaching the team. Spielman, as in battle as he is, I think it's more inherent to the job than what he's actually done as the GM. And their focus on getting guys like Trey Waynes, good people in the organization, kind of stop with any of this love boat shenanigans, right? We want to be known for something other than DUIs and love boats. So I think the Vikings, in my mind, and maybe it's just the potential that they're in a different place than the Wild are, but the Wild have to prove they can break through the Blackhawks. The Vikings at this point just need to prove they can be 10-6 and make.
I completely agree with the Vikings as pick too. I mean, I do think that the Vikings probably have the best chance next year to be one of the best teams in the NFL and one of the better teams in the NFL. But for me, I just kind of looked at the Wild made it to the playoffs last year. The Vikings didn't.
Sure.
I do think the Vikings have pieces in place to make a huge jump forward. But I went with the Wild, but I can see your argument. I completely agree with the Vikings.
If the award was team on the rise, it'd be the Vikings. But just based on the merit of playoff appearances, the Wild were the only playoff team in this market besides the Gophers losing a bowl game. And they did win a playoff series. It was a tremendous ride. The Dubnyk era was one of the best stretches of Wild hockey we've ever seen in this state. So for that reason, the Minnesota Wild are your best team of 2014-15. And that concludes the Minnesota Sports ESPYs. 8 awards given out, and to quickly recap, the best breakthrough athlete, Xavier Rhodes. Best comeback athlete, Jason Zucker. Best upset, Gophers over Nebraska. The best game, Twins comeback on Friday against Detroit. Best play, Anthony Barr with the game-winning scoop and score. The best coach, Jerry Kill. The best athlete, Zach Parise. And the best team, the Minnesota Wild. Fellas, committee, you look great, by the way, in your tuxedos and your hair slicked back and all. I guess I can't even say that because this is a recorded segment. It'll be on YouTube.
That's true.
They're going to know that...
Yeah, I brushed my teeth this morning.
I didn't even comb my hair this morning, and now I'm going to have microphone hair. Ugh.
Yeah, you look terrible, I'm not going to lie.
Well, they can only see the